Hello, everyone. Welcome to DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar, Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce and co-host of DisrupTV. Please follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show and send questions to Ray, myself, and our guests using hashtag DisrupTV. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wong, best-selling author, Forbes, Inc., ZDNet contributor, founder of Constellation Research, and one of the most social futurists on Twitter. You can follow Ray at rwong0. Hi, Ray.
Hey, and I'm glad to here to be joined with Vala, Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce, Huffington Post top writers, top influencers for CIOs and CMOs, and of course follow him at Vala Afshar, A-F-S-H-A-R. So who do we have today? We got a pretty exciting lineup.
We got an amazing lineup, and we're going to start with Ross Mason, founder and VP of Product Strategy at MuleSoft. Ross founded MuleSoft 10 years ago, 2006, on the idea of connecting application, data, devices, and making it all easy. And now today, MuleSoft is a software company headquartered in San Francisco, providing integration software for connecting applications, data sources, and APIs on cloud and on-premise solutions. Ross is responsible for MuleSoft's product strategy, open source leadership, engineering alignment, and direct engagement with customers. Welcome to DisrupTV, Ross.
Great, thanks guys. It's a pleasure to be here. Great intro, thank you.
You're welcome. I had to cut it down. Your bio is, you've done a lot.
I know, yeah. Usually doing one thing, I just connect stuff. That's basically what I do.
Yeah, there we go. Very tweetable, I love it.
That's just the work bio, though. We haven't seen the other bio. No, I was kidding.
That's fine.
We like the fun bio. So, hey, tell us about yourself, though, and what's going on, right? You founded MuleSoft. I mean, at the time you founded MuleSoft 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of stuff to connect. It wasn't as hard as it is now. Now it's like everything is trying to get connected in all these different shapes and forms. Yeah. And so what was that core problem that you're trying to solve, and how's it evolved over the last 10 years?
So 10 years ago, the problem really was, it was still horrific, right? So if you've ever tried to connect a back-end system that was written in COBOL, or it was an AS400 system, or even SAP, it's hugely complicated. And when we talk about moving data around the enterprise, we forget that the complexity of just getting information from one place to another is still enormously high, right? But what's actually changed in the last few years is the landscape and the number of applications are so numerous. There's so many more building blocks. There's so many easier ways for developers to build new applications. Obviously to drive new consumption experiences, to change the way processes work inside organizations and bring new products to market. It's gotten much more complicated. Yet bizarrely, we never really focused on fixing the problem in the first time. It was always this afterthought. It's like, buy the application. That's the thing that drives competitive advantage, and then we'll connect it as best we can. And we did that for 15 years, and now we're paying the price for it. Well, certainly the big enterprises are. And so what's changed is a realization that the old model just isn't working, right? The old way of tackling this problem has gotten so painful, and by painful I mean, it slows you down to the point where you can't make any changes because there's so much dependencies that you can't see between applications that any one change has an unknown impact to the rest of the organization. So companies are starting to look very differently and getting a lot more serious around connectivity, and they're starting to realize that the better they connect things and the faster they can connect things and reconnect things, the better competitive advantage they have, because they can bring things to market quicker, right? So I can talk a bit more about that, but it's just a realization that the old model has fundamentally broken under its own horrific weight, and our organizations are now just looking for a better way of doing things, a much better way of doing things, like not just a 5-10% difference, but they got to be thinking about scale for the next 10 years.
Before I switch to Val on the next question, I mean, one of the hard parts too is in the past, everybody hand-coded this stuff too. So, yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that you tried to address was the fact that everyone hand-coded it very differently, even for the same problem. So.
Yeah. Well, actually, the original, when I started, I was saying I'm going to productize this problem, which is, either you're hand-coding, which is a nightmare because what you end up is it's like millions of lines of code that nobody understands or touches. And then you also had the big integration products that really only half productize. They sort of, they created these massive platforms. And of course, the whole point was to sell as much software as possible. Sorry if anyone's from IBM, but you know what I'm talking about. And now companies aren't looking for that. They're looking for something much more streamlined, much more lightweight that will plug into agile processes and actually productize the connectivity and the exposure of that data much more than we ever have done. And that's really what MuleSoft has ushered into the limelight.
On our last episode, we had Anil Bushri, CEO of Workday, and he talked about speed that's required in business to stay relevant as far as transformation and the importance of multi-tenant solutions, so that when you are developing, and we were talking about artificial intelligence technologies, but he said if you've got scientists working on new machine or deep learning algorithms, only to find that they need to further customize for on-premise solutions, that will not allow you to compete and maintain the speed you need in terms of innovation. And that consumer application mindset is what's driving Workday's success. When you're guiding and partnering with companies as they're going through digital transformation, what are some of the challenges that you see, whether it's on-premise versus cloud, skills, talent, process? What's changed over the last 10 years?
All of that stuff.
All that stuff.
So, I mean, there's a ton of areas, and I could probably speak for 20 minutes on that problem. I'll try and boil it down to some simple things. One is, over the last 10 years, the role of the CIO in that organization has been sort of whittled down into just a project delivery arm while the business procures software and tells IT that they need to get it connected. The problem with that model is that IT hasn't been able to evolve itself to supporting the business the right way. So, you can imagine, 10 years ago this model worked. Centralized IT, we own the network, we procure the apps, and then we help you connect them. But there was only like a couple of hundred apps. Now every organization has at least got 6,000 that they know of, and then there's, MuleSoft, we use like 115 SaaS applications in our marketing department. Like, it's insane, right? It just and the reason we do it is not because we're using everyone in, as being an operational application, but we want to be able to quickly plug in a new application, figure out if it works, and unplug it again if it doesn't, or invest in it if we believe it's going to drive our value. So the mindset has often, even into the last year or two, has really been around innovation at the edges. Like, don't worry about the core. We'll stick things on the edge and we'll move fast and we'll create creative teams and marketing will drive more of their outcomes. The problem with that is everyone's come to the realization that unless you can unlock the core value of the organization, the data and assets they built up over the last 10, 20, 30 years, none of that stuff works that well and you get marginal results. So what's really going on now is a realization that sort of getting good at change has to happen at the core of the business. And the conversations I'm having now, used to be with CIOs, now it's CEOs and CIOs together, they're actually traveling in pairs a lot more, is a realization that there's got to be absolute alignment between IT strategy and the business strategy. And frankly, 6 months from now, I think it's going to be most CEOs will be talking around how they've just brought those two worlds together, and there's no difference between your business strategy and your IT strategy. And we've got to get out of that mindset that it's one function of the organization and realize that technology is pervasive across every product, every line of business, the way you get your, you get your business moving. And if you don't have a good strategy from the very top on how you're going to bring technology or remove technology out of the organization, how you're going to drive those products, you're not going to succeed. So this idea of innovation at the edge isn't working well enough for people. They've got to start transformation in the core as well.
That's actually a big shift, right? One of the things that's happened in IT is really the shift to actually working closer to business, and I think you're really highlighting that. There are other shifts as well, right? I mean, do you see a trend in terms of where, the notion of integration, the notion of connectivity is built starting from the beginning versus the end? Or do you see people still waiting till the very end to figure out how this all works with each other?
So there has been a lot of wait and see. We'll buy Salesforce, we'll buy in on the, single view of the customer, which is very valid. It's very valuable. But if you don't understand how that's going to connect the rest of the organization, guess what? Those projects struggle, right? Because people don't get the information they need. So I think there's some education going on. I think the ISVs like Salesforce, like Workday, like ServiceNow are really starting to get it. We've got good partnerships there. We're partnering very strongly with the SIs who varying stages of maturity of understanding what that really means to start at the beginning versus the end. The key thing, though, is we always used to tackle this problem as a centralized architecture group would go and figure out how to do it, and they build the perfect architecture. Guess what? Nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to invest time and money to put in the perfect architecture before bringing in the application that they need to run their business. So we've gotten very good at talking around this new IT operating model that hinges on the value of delivering APIs within the organization and driving reuse, actual and self-service of the data and assets through those APIs, so more of the organization can own more of the outcome. Right? I'll give you more about that, but it's an idea that we've really been pushing for the last couple of years, and it's really starting to take hold.
Let's talk about the API economy and smart integration of all these applications. We talked about the changing role of IT. There are no IT projects, there are only business projects. And alignment of IT to line of business, more involvement of CEOs, which I agree, the more I engage with our customers at Salesforce, the more I'm finding the CEO at those early meetings when we're talking about architecture and impact, and that's fantastic because you ultimately have the decision maker in the room. What are some of the changes and shifts you see in the industry? So if you were having the MuleSoft annual conference and you're going to lead with 3 of your best and brightest customers, what industries are they representing? Who's embracing this API economy and really accelerating in terms of transformation?
Yeah, so there's a couple of key areas. Financial services, and really, it's insurance and banking, but I'm seeing the biggest step change in banking, especially around consumer, retail, wholesale. There it's really, there's so much regulation, it's gotten so hard to be a bank. I know there's no sympathy for banks, and I understand, but if you understand how much,
especially after yesterday's news, but yes.
No, I mean, I'm not buying for the banks. I'm just giving an honest view. But they have a lot to deal with, and they just haven't got the right structure as an organization to be able to meet all the regulatory requirements and actually deliver products to market faster and deliver the type of consumer experiences that we have all started to expect from all the other apps that we use. And so they're really struggling, and because they're struggling, there is a top-down mandate to really change the culture of banks. So it's not about, hey, we've got to refresh the technology, but they've really understood that they've actually got to do things differently wholesale. Like they've gotten over the hump of, hey, we'll just try and refresh and see how it works. They've tried that the last 5 years, it hasn't worked. They're now looking at a much bigger cultural shift. And often those conversations hinge around APIfying the business, right? So a lot of the banks, especially in the UK, we've got payments initiatives and open bank initiatives down there. They're talking about being, they're trying to become, there's a race to become the first API bank where all their products like lending, like mortgage, like payments become an API platform that they can build an ecosystem around. So a lot of them are thinking that way right now. Many of them are running down a path. They're getting some small early successes, nothing to write home about yet, nothing that's going to transform the business yet. But as you'd expect from banks, they're investing heavily there because they believe it's the right approach. Sure. So that's really interesting. We're seeing it in retail versus e-commerce and the blurring lines there. I mean, we see that all the time. The Jet announcement was just another one of those. But again, there it's more around getting really good at understanding channels and how to distribute channels and how to gauge across channels. Now, whether you're in retail, whether you're in media, they actually sound quite similar now. Obviously, retail has a lot more to deal with in terms of logistics and warehousing and delivery and stuff like that. And then the final thing is education for us has been a pretty big, the education hospitals are doing lots of really interesting things to drive innovation and think differently about how to solve their problems. We're seeing it in higher ed where obviously, the millennials of 5 years ago went through education. They've all got this very different view of the world. Education is now trying to catch up and figure out how do we create the best engagement and learning experience, because they're our customer now. Like when I went to university, I wasn't a customer, I was a student, right? But they're now a customer. And we've become very customer-centric, and everywhere is starting to feel it, even the areas you wouldn't think so.
Absolutely. It's the only industry where you fire your customers every 4 years. And,
Yeah, like you're out.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Ray and I both are seeing our paths are crossing in terms of super innovation, almost business model innovation, not just modernization of existing processes or incremental. These are business model innovation.
Exactly.
Integration.
I like that. It's about the business model. It's not about the technology. Like the conversations I drive, the technology is actually tertiary. First of all, is what do you want to be when for your next 10 years of growth? What are the key outcomes you need to get hold of? What does the organization need to look like to support that change today and tomorrow? Because today is harder than tomorrow, actually. Once you start getting the organization, that's great. And then you talk about the technology and the platforms that are going to support you getting you there. And that's I think, another big shift in the way people start. Maybe I don't think people have got that yet, but I think that's the next shift is we'll see a lot more discussion around the business models and the operating models to support them.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And as you talk about those new technologies and that shift, one of the areas that I see you guys in a lot now is really around blockchain, right? And you think about blockchain and what's required in areas such like financial services and what's actually happening in healthcare. These are some of the areas that require a different type of connectivity or types or levels of integration. What are you guys doing in that area?
Yeah, I mean, our play is pretty similar, right? We talk about blockchain is not. I mean, because connecting the blockchain and feeding blockchain isn't that difficult for us. We've gotten pretty good at connecting stuff. But it's really, what's the business model, or what's that going to enable you to do? So you have this ledger. So what does that mean? What kind of insights do you want to derive from that? And I went to a fintech conference earlier this year, and I was a bit disappointed by it because there was 5 or 6 blockchain companies, and they all said, hey, look, we put a REST API on blockchain. We've created it as a service. I'm like, okay, now what? Yeah, now what? I wanted to see the business models. What's the business models on top of that you can now drive? Can I, when I go to Wall Street Journal, do I have to subscribe, or can I just pay 1 cent through my, to a retinal scan on my camera and read that article because I want to read that right there and then? Like, and then that, because blockchain, for example, is really good for micropayments, right? It's very hard to justify spending 1 cent or 10 cent on an article. So I wanted to hear that stuff. I wanted to hear where's the innovation going because we've got this capability. Unfortunately, it's still in the hands of the technologists. And by the way, I'm a technologist. I get the redundancy there. But I'm half technologist, half sort of. I want to see the world change, and sure. I want to see the big ideas. I want to see what's going to happen next. Sure, and we're not seeing it yet. So we're very much in the let's connect it, not what's the outcome.
Yeah, a few months back, we invited Don Tapscott on our show, author of Blockchain Revolution, to talk about exactly that, new business models, and it's just a fascinating book if you haven't read it, so I highly recommend it. But you're not just a technologist; you're a founder of one of the cloud stars in a 10-year-old company with customers around the world. What's it like to be a founder of in a fast-moving enterprise startup environment and now a mature company?
It is awesome and terrifying.
Yeah. That's the delicious paradox. Paradox.
It is fantastic. I like doing things like heliboarding and kite surfing, and it's the same sort of thing. It's like you get this amazing experience, but it is a bit terrifying, and the mistakes you make, you can really pay for them. So it doesn't mean I'm risk averse, but it just means I'm much more mindful about what we do and kind of think from things from different angles. It is pretty amazing. What is more amazing is the people you attract and the people you build around you. So it's it really isn't about what I do anymore. It's around what the organization does, and that's fantastic. I always talk to people. I like to be surprised. I like to be delighted by things, and that can be as engineering. I spent some time with our engineer a couple of weeks ago, and they showed me some things they're working on. Surprise and delight all the way. It was fantastic. But then on the business side, just hearing how we're engaging differently in North America or EMEA, hearing about specific accounts, even working with the teams on the strategies, it's very exciting for me. Being able to touch all of that and feel it and just see the greatness that people can achieve when they pull together is fantastic. So I don't know how to explain it, but it is awesome and terrible.
Hey, Ross.
That's good feedback to entrepreneurs watching. So it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to have butterflies in your stomach. That's part of the game.
Yes.
No, hey, Ross, thank you for being on the show. Definitely come on back. Folks, this is Ross Mason, founder of MuleSoft, Turing specialist, something that people don't realize. He studied that for some time, and also definitely award-winning CTO, and of course, startup advisor. So thanks a lot for being on the show, Ross.
Great.
Thank you, Ross.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ray, that was a fast 20 minutes. We could have talked for another 2 hours. That was awesome. Speaking of awesome, now we're ready to speak to our second amazing guest, Adele Sweetwood, Senior Vice President of Global Marketing and Shared Services at SaaS. Adele guides marketing strategies and go-to-market programs for SaaS. Her responsibility spans field and digital marketing, demand generation, marketing science, as well as retention and events. She oversees digital investments in advertising, content, and social media. We're talking the whole thing. And Adele is the author of a new book, Analytical Marketeer, where empowering organizations, over 400 marketeers with data analytics so that you can grow revenue and optimize customer interactions. We're going to talk about the book. Welcome, Adele, to DisrupTV.
Thank you, Val. It's nice to be here.
Welcome, Adele. We've got your special book. This thing's awesome. Hot off the presses, but not available yet in public. Thank you so much. So.
Yes, you're special, Ray. So you got a special copy.
A signed copy. Before we get into it, I just want to say this is what Jeffrey Moore said about the book. Persuasive and powerful, an essential guide to rethinking and rebuilding your marketing organization from mindset and structure and talent and leadership. So we got one of the world's top futurists talking about the book. And then Godfather of CRM, Ray, your mentor and my mentor, Adele has not only been there, she's done it. From the use of analytics to hiring of the right people, this book is an important read for your organization. This is from the Godfather of CRM. So congratulations. What sounds like it's going to be a bestseller. That's awesome.
I hope so after that introduction.
Right. She's also got a photo from Tom Davenport too. This thing's pretty wild.
I know, it's amazing. I was reading it back. It's pretty amazing.
So, well, hey, welcome to the show, Adele. How data and analytics changed the world of marketing? Let's start there. Why not? So.
Well, and I think you guys can answer that question too, right? Data and analytics, which has been around clearly for a long time for all of us. I think it's had a huge impact in marketing. It really redefines the value of marketing, and we've done that in response to the fact that our customers have changed. So all of that's made a big difference for us, and ultimately, I think the part that we didn't pay as much attention to, and what the book is focusing more on, is what's changed about the people in marketing, and the culture and the mindset and everything that pulls it together. Clearly, the technology is different, the challenges are different. There's a ton of data and information and analytics and tools and strategies and channels, but really the change in marketing is about the people that are in the organization, how they need to be today versus where they were yesterday, and the value that they can deliver to the organization. And that's been the exciting part of marketing, at least from my perspective.
Absolutely. Last week I wrote a Huffington Post article recapping a recent Harvard Business Review survey of 600 sales and marketing executives in terms of their use of analytics, advanced analytics. And this was the Harvard Business Review Analytics Services organization that reached out to their community. And it included board members, CMOs, VPs. But one of the big takeaways was that only 15%, of businesses are using advanced analytics. Does that surprise you? And what's keeping them? What's hindering them from the other 85% to really graduate to use of predictive analytics and advanced analytics in marketing?
I think it depends on the industry. So that's a big difference from what we've seen, and what I've seen is you've got financial service industries that are probably much farther ahead in predictive type analytics. But you've got maybe retail that's probably, maybe doing some forecasting, but not necessarily in the true advanced analytic stages. And all of us have experienced this influx of channels and data and information. And doing that, we've all had to become that much more savvy. And I think it's just taking longer than what people anticipate, which isn't that different than most everything in our technology space, right? I mean, we've been talking about analytics for a long time. Now, analytics is part of everybody's dialogue, just the same way data is, right? Business people didn't talk about data and analytics 10 years ago, per se. But just like you guys were talking with Ross, I mean, the business side, the technology side, everybody is talking about data and analytics now. But you have to start with what's available to you. So I think in a lot of marketing and sales organizations, you would start with the more basics of metrics and baseline analytics. And then move into more sophisticated techniques, and that's something to be very conscious about, because the consumer and what the consumers have challenged us with is being more intelligent about what they want, when they want it, and how they want to converse with us, right? And that's going to force that level of predictive or journey-based marketing or nurturing approaches, and eliminate that mass marketing approach that I think we've all been very used to, that we can all run reports on, but reports, metrics is not analytics necessarily.
Sure.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, reporting only tells you something. Analytics hopefully gives you a little bit more insight, and that's what we're trying to get to. So now, one of the interesting things is, we're trying to figure out what the benefits are, right? And what are the hindrances? Sometimes people are overwhelmed. It's like, oh no! Like suddenly you say analytics, people are like, what do I do? I got to quant my marketing, as opposed to folks that are traditionally into the brand and the content. But there's a coming together of these two things, and let's start by talking about their benefits and their hindrances.
Wow, the benefits for me are going to be front and center, because I live and breathe analytics, being with the company I work with and what we do. But in talking to other clients and other customers as part of the book process, as well as day to day, I do think everybody believes that the ultimate benefit is about changing the customer's experience. Because customer experience in and of itself, yes, perfect topic, wonderful topic, hot right now. But we're not going to get to a level of understanding that experience and really changing that experience without data and analytics at the forefront of what we want to do. So I think the biggest benefit for all of us is going to be how we continually better service, understand, and engage with our customers, and change the way they feel about all of these interactions, because I think that's happened pretty aggressively in the last several years as well. So I definitely don't know that I see different benefits. The benefit for marketers, so let me shift to that a bit, is I think it's opened up a whole new career opportunity for marketers, right? Mm-hmm. If we're going to change the expectations of our marketers and our salespeople, for that matter, to be more analytical in the way they think, to be more curious, to be more data-driven, to make decisions not based on what they experienced yesterday, but what they think might happen tomorrow, and it changes their career path. It changes their expectations we have of them, but it gives them more opportunity to be more of higher value to an organization. And I think that's when I talk to the people in our organization and experience what we went through, because that's really what the book is talking about. What did we go through, and how did we experience it? Some of the best descriptors come from the individuals that say, I get to learn different things. I've got a new appreciation for the technologies, and for math, and for analytics, and for systems, and for data than I ever had before. And I can take that skill set and what I've learned and that part of my career, and I can take it anywhere. I can, it's really of high value to the marketers. So I think there's maybe a subtle benefit we don't talk about as much that's pretty critical to a career direction for our field.
You're right. I mean, the average CMO is tracking at about 3.5 years. So I mean, it's just definitely a way to kind of like prolong not only just the career, but also bring some value back with the data and analytics.
Absolutely.
Right, and their expectation of them is that they're going to be more technically savvy, right? They're going to understand technology. That and I don't know. I guess there's chief technology officers or chief marketing technology officers and all these things that might be emerging. But at some point, we're going to have too many chiefs, And you got to expect the chief to actually
Nobody wants to
have
do
a
any work.
lot of knowledge, right? In multiple categories. Otherwise, there's going to have too much separation of things instead of the coming together of things.
Hey, chief of chiefs,
Don't
committees
tell
and
anybody I
committees.
said that.
Yeah. Thank goodness Ray is the only chief at Constellation Research. I have some competition at Salesforce, but Ray is in good shape. Well, look, let's talk about chiefs. In your wonderful book, you have great illustrations that codify some of these principles. I remember 4 concentric circles that talk about critical success factors. You talked about mindset, shifting from being reactive to proactive. You talked about structure, going from silos to converged. You talked about talent, which going from creative to both creative and analytical. And then you talked a lot about leadership and going from responsive to agile. Can you talk a little bit about what's the mindset of a digital savvy, successful CMO or marketing leader in general, based on the customers that you advise?
And if you need a visual, here it is.
Oh, there we go. See, this is why Ray is the big chief.
This is why we have the book. It's an awesome book.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, well, before I do that, though, I did not answer one of Ray's questions. You asked
please.
about the hindrance, and I think it's an important aspect to answering the next question. And I'd like to know if you guys agree that, from my perspective, what keeps us from gaining all the benefit we can get is the volume of channels and data and options we today have as marketers, and the rate at which things change and our ability to get through it all to figure out what works. And that sort of challenge that we all have came through in the discussions about mindset and structure and talent and leadership when, this is not just at SAS, but I think across a lot of companies, as a new channel comes on board, the first thing that tends to happen, and once it gets some momentum, is all of a sudden there's a team of people for that channel. So there's the search marketing team and the social team and the community team and the blogging team, and they all kind of come up as teams, right? Which I understand why, and it makes some sense. But then they all have their own silo, right? They have their own perspective, and until someone says, wait a minute, that thing you just did in social had a huge impact on my search investment. We got to come together.
Right.
So all of that challenge kind of forced a conversation that says, okay, we've got to think differently as a marketing organization, organize differently as a marketing organization, and drive to a more cohesive approach. So I think the 4 categories that we came up with when we designed the content were really about those experiences. And mindset is the start of it, right? People always say, okay, there's going to be a technology problem. You need the right people. You're going to change some process. So what's first? Well, the first thing it's culture. It's mindset. It's explaining to people you've got to think about this differently, so you act and react differently. And instead of sort of waiting for things to happen, you've got to proactively look for those things that are happening. So being more curious, not just looking at the metrics and reports you're getting, but studying the data and the pattern and the trends and asking a different set of questions. We also made sure that we brought a lot of the IT organization, the data architects, the data visualization people into that mix. So you've got lots of different people asking the right questions, and really pushing the organization to think about how to resolve a problem differently than the traditional way. So that's a culture shift in setting expectations for marketers, and just like any culture shift, change management, how do you design objectives so that they actually make sense to where you want them to go, setting their targets differently, and rewarding them both when it works and when it doesn't work, because they're trying things out.
One of the hottest areas in marketing today, as you're probably facing and implementing yourself as well, as account-based marketing, right? And accounts-based marketing, account-based management, and knowing some of the techniques that you're talking about in your book, and knowing about where ABM's headed. Any suggestions for folks on what to do and apply analytics to ABM to be successful?
I agree that account-based marketing is definitely taking on a whole new momentum. And you're right, it's not that different in the context of what we need to do, but maybe how we need to do it. And I think for us, the challenge has been account-based marketing tends to get really, really big before you actually get really, really good at any one component of it.
Yep.
So I think the biggest piece of advice is focus. Figure out what problem we're trying to solve. Don't try to boil the ocean, so to speak, or pick, this isn't all accounts. It's selecting a certain category of accounts or a certain type of objective that you're trying to reach or opinion you're trying to change or adoption cycle if it's a current customer, and design in a very tight way. So that traditional test and change kind of approach, I think, is what I would see as an option, and it allows you to really test the analytics part of it as well.
You said something that was really key here, because a lot of times people put ABM in without any metrics, right? Without any of the analytics that they need. And it sounds like start small, get that to scale, and then as you figure out the metrics that actually work for you, then roll it out to everybody else. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, but I think with account-based marketing, the biggest mistake you can make is assume that all the accounts are the same. So you're going to have to look for profiles of similar type, whether it's by industry or size of a company, yep, or whatever it might be, and then do some testing. But the value of account-based marketing is that it's custom and unique, no different than that consumer's expectation. Then when I log on to Zappos or wherever, I'm going to get a very personalized experience. The account is expecting the same thing.
So what you're saying is make sure that even while you're measuring this, even the metrics are going to be different for every account because of that personalization factor.
Absolutely.
I think they could be, so that you might have to design the structure or the systems differently to support that.
Got it.
Absolutely. I agree with that. So we had Ross talk about his 115 SaaS applications just in marketing, and we had a few weeks back we had Scott Brinker on our show, and he talked about his latest MarTech super infographic, which is approximately 5,000 MarTech, just MarTech companies. So clearly the landscape in marketing technology is exploding at unprecedented rates. What are some of the technologies that you're experimenting with, or your customers, where there's tight integration with analytics and it's helping them do that level of large-scale personalization that's required, whether it's through journeys or custom KPIs for ABM?
The technology, I'm going to be biased because our technology is SaaS, and we're using SaaS in all those component areas. So
that's only using one product line.
That's a loaded question or a seeded question, but happy to admit it. I think what's an interesting conversation is the techniques, right? So whether it's and I think for us what's really significant now is the journey-based marketing. So really understanding customer journeys, both the current customer base, because when you're the size of SaaS and have that really robust customer base, it's a constant opportunity component as well, but it's more than just what they might want to purchase. It's how do they want to interact with us, what's their adoption cycle, what's their use cycle, and how can we make the services and the experience components that make them want to continue doing business with us. So it's marketing along the journey that's both the early parts, and then of course the adoption and use cycles, as well as when they want to add additional technologies. So customer journey marketing big. There's nurturing components to that. Of course, the modeling efforts that you have to go into determining which are the right paths they might take. We always joke about looking for the happy path. So what are the things that they did to look for the happy path? The willingness to do a level of deeper segmentation that allows for maybe smaller campaigns or smaller outbound efforts based on that targeting. So I think it's really a change in technique from a campaign design standpoint.
Okay.
Marketers tend to go.
This is inclusive of persona segmentation?
Yeah,
so
persona segmentation.
Okay.
Yeah, persona and behavior. So I think everybody's used to persona.
Yep.
But when you couple that with behavior, your typical size of a campaign is going to shrink.
Sure.
Because you're paying attention to that behavior differently, and that's a change in feeling like, oh, I have to get this out to everyone. No, you need to get it out to who you think is going to care about it. And then the ability to do a level of tracking that allows you to shift and change those strategies or those business rules while it's happening.
Yeah.
And I might take somebody from this part of the journey and realize, wait a minute, they're not in that part of the journey anymore. I'm going to shift them over here.
Sure.
So it's you're constantly interfacing with the efforts there. But you know, there's a ton of technology out there. You're right. There's a lot of options. I think depending on the size of company you are, the sophistication of your own data and the type of information you're trying to understand is going to dictate your level of technology interaction, and what you want to scale to, and how simplistic it might be to what, again, to how complex it might be. Another huge technology component that's very impactful for the sales organization is really supplying digital footprint, digital dialogue type content and analysis, and that's a huge part of the account-based marketing as well. So digital footprint and all of the data-oriented tools and the analytics-based tools that help gather that information becomes pretty critical.
It is amazing because you have, as Ray, we've talked about this before, you at an account level, you actually have multiple journeys going on because the buying decision team could be 6, 7, 10 strong. Each of them are different personas. They have different behaviors. They have different digital footprints. So it's this, they're comped differently. So you got to analyze structured, unstructured data across multiple personas, multiple behaviors, concurrent journeys, so you can define that buying process map. And then ultimately go to what Dennis Pombrion likes to say, finding those moments of truth where you can actually add value in the engagement process. And as you said, Adele, in real time. So it's just an awesome time to be a marketeer because it's as much science as it is art, and that's pretty terrific.
Well, funnels are dead, and we know that.
They are dead, and we're funnels.
And Adele, I mean, we'll end with how your book ends. You end the book well, and you say, hey, look, what's next, and the call to action. What's your call to action to everyone, and then we'll close out.
Wow, pay attention. The customer matters. Your people matter. It's time to change. It's time to change.
And where are you speaking next week?
I'm with you next week on a live stream event at Analytics Experience. We'll be on a panel with Miss Jill Deshay, so you can all join us for that, and hopefully somebody's tweeting it because I can't tweet and talk at the same.
No problem. We've got Sweetwood. Thank you for being. Please come on back. And this is her new book. It launches October, is that 6th, I believe? 4th, October 4th. All right, get it on Amazon. Buy the book October 4th. Adele Sweetwood. You can catch it here, and definitely see you at the Analytics Experience if you're there in Las Vegas next week. So take care.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Adele. Awesome. All right, well.
And just when we had enough energy and chaos and insights, who do we have next?
Well, at DisrupTV, we're always seeking the path to happiness. And with that said, we have our what I call cleanup hitter for our show today, Esteban Kolsky, principal and founder of ThinkJar. Esteban has an advisory research capability at think tank focusing on customer strategies. So anything that has a C in it, CRM, social CRM, SEM, CX. Communities. He's a keynote speaker. He's a philosopher, a researcher, a consultant, over 25 years of experience. Before being a CEO and founder of ThinkJar, he was at Gartner for 10 years. We won't hold that against him. He's brilliant. He's currently advising vendors, organizations to how to extend their interactions from CRM niche to entire organizations and becoming a more collaborative, connected businesses. Welcome to our show, Esteban.
Who are you talking about, dude?
Oh, wait, we got the wrong person. The first time we got the wrong bio.
You got the wrong person, dude.
I thought for sure it was his bio because I know he's a philosopher. I know he's an expert.
He's a foodie, actually. I think this is a foodie bio.
I think, therefore, I think.
I see. All right. Well, hey, we're gonna like cover a couple things today, and I guess one of them you want to hit is AI and the hype that surrounds it, and then I want to talk about
singularity. It's taking over the world. Computers are taking over. We're all going to be without a job next year. The Star Trek economy. We're all going to sit at home getting paid to do nothing. It's awesome.
Hey, we're done.
Hey.
Great. It's been a great episode. Thanks for being on.
You mean how we get there is what you mean. Yeah, that's hype.
Okay, well, so as a philosopher, you have your philosophy in terms of the maturation of AI. I think you've got 6 or 7 maturity stages. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, do you want me to share a screen? I was just working on that actually.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, we love. Oh, wow, we got props. We've got our guests bringing props.
Can you see that screen?
Oh yeah, please. Can you put it in presentation mode?
So basically, that's I've been working on this for a while and it's still not final. But this is something that I worked with in the last few weeks and trying to bring some clarity to AI. There's a lot of confusion into AI and where we're starting and where we're going and all that stuff. So one thing, a couple of things on this chart. First of all, it is a black box because we all think in AI, analytics is a black box. That's the quaint, subtle touch that nobody can notice.
That's what the color was for. I got it.
Yeah. No, I'm a great designer. That's where the color comes from. But the black box is because we all think of analytics as a black box where we throw stuff in there and something happens at the end, right? But the idea is it's analytics and ultimately AI is about answering the basic questions of business. What's happening now, what may happen next, what should happen next, and what will happen next. And when you put it all together, AI and machine learning, cognition, whatever definition you want to make of that, essentially comes down to what follows analytics. When you do analytics, you actually understand your business better. You understand the actions that you should take. You understand what could happen, what should happen, and then you give it to the computer, and the machine learning takes over and basically makes things happen. That's the basic idea behind all this, right?
Esteban, can you tweet that slide, or is this top secret? You're gonna save it for a conference or something?
Oh no, I got we're just getting started.
No. I look at that slide and I see 100 retweet graphics. So I'm selfishly asking.
I'll send you this deck. Actually, this is one small portion of a deck that we ran through Salesforce yesterday, doing some work that we were doing, right? And then the second part of that is how do we go from here moving forward, and then again, it's a question of evolution, right? And then the key part of this slide is the confidence in the outcome. Unless we trust computers to do something right, we're not going to let them do anything. Singularity will never happen, more than likely, but we still need to trust computers that are doing things that we're doing. This is not about ethics. It's not about will the computer kill me or kill a baby first or whatever. But honestly, it couldn't care less about. This is about business. That's a business, and business has two parts. A company has processes that they need to optimize, have customers that you want to personalize. You find the best combination for both using analytics. Then you put it into automation through prescriptive and predictive analytics, and finally you give it to the machine to figure out through AI. So
when you say descriptive and predictive, you're talking about why is it happening and what may happen? Is that
right. So there's 3 types of analytics. There's descriptive, which basically says what's happening now. There's predictive that says this is what should happen if everything continues to be the same. Okay. And then there's prescriptive that says if you're smart, this is what you will do because it has the highest likelihood of success. And as you evolve, the difference is repeating the past or high likelihood of success, whatever way you define success, right? AI takes over at the point where you need to actually identify path that have higher likelihood of success, but become much more complex computations. We as humans can only process so much information and so many combinations. Computers do a great job of managing a lot more combinations, and that's what artificial intelligence is. It's about combining, finding better patterns for more data than ever before. And it's a post-big data, it's a realization that I invested in big data, so what do I do now with all this money that I spend in getting more data into my organization? Well, this is what you do. Implement analytics and move towards AI in the next 20 years. So
Ray, why is AI working now? What are the driving factors that make AI successful or relevant now? Because this is a 20-year-old conversation, or at least a topic.
Dude, I was saying
it's 40 years, not 20.
It's
Yeah, you're right.
1940?
1956, I think, was when it was first. But I mean, really, practically speaking.
25 years of the fifth coming of AI, which was started by Japan, the Institute in Artificial Intelligence, which published what it was then the ultimate encyclopedia of artificial intelligence. Was 3 tomes. I read it when I was 17, and it changed my life, like they say in in self-help tools and all that.
You read a self-help book, and now you're an expert in AI. This is awesome.
When he was 17.
But on a serious note, you built neural nets, Esteban. I think people don't realize that you actually built neural nets in the 90s. And in the 90s, right? I mean, the things that hindering AI to be successful was really what? Compute power was pretty shitty. It took a long time to do a lot of this stuff, right? I mean, even a lot of the software wasn't written. So
evolution of AI is modeling computers after our own mind. As feeble and weak and meek as our minds are, we want computers to do what we do. Why? I don't know.
Insult us? Ray, did he just insult us?
I think he did. I think we're meek. I can't remember what that was.
You are close, But the thing is, like, for some reason, we want to get computers to emulate the way we do things, and the way we do things is through learning, which is what cognition and machine learning is all about. And learning is about applying patterns to unknown data sets. So you have a data set and you apply a pattern, and then you understand what it is, and then you learn from that, right? That's the basic. So then we started trying to get computers to learn the way we do, and we got into machine learning, cognition, and all that stuff. But the biggest problem that we had is, like, our brains work at a much faster speed than any computer that it can produce ever, period. Even quantum computing cannot approach the speed at which we process things. You see, a piece of wood with 4 legs, a seat and a back, and you immediately apply there is a chair. To teach a computer through a neural network to do that, it will take you weeks of programming and definition of, like, what's a leg, how do you define a leg, what's the angle, what is this, how much variation can you have in the angle, blah 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 blah. So I mean, what I usually use as a difference between computers and humans is, like, if you would have let a computer discover penicillin, no matter how much variation you put in the models, it would have never happened, because a fungus growing on a piece of bread will never become medicine in a computer's mind. Right? But somebody said, hey, I tried everything else, might as well try the fungus, see what happens. And guess what?
Accidental innovation. Yeah.
I didn't die. I didn't die.
I didn't die.
I even feel better.
A computer would have never let Marie Curie, work with radioisotopes, because people die. And there's no level of, there's no level of variance that you can put into the model that would allow a computer to do that. So there's a significant difference between us and them. But the reason we are seeing the resurgence of AI now is because we see a resurgence of analytics. AI is what happens when analytics gets to the edge and you can't go any further. AI is what happens when you have too much data and an inability to process and establish models, because now you got to learn what the data means and how to move it forward and all that. If you look at some of the best AI tools, I mean, we talked about Neuralogics here last week, and Jenna Eggers. We talk about Bayonne Core that was recently acquired by Salesforce. We talk about NanoRep and a few other people that are actually doing true machine learning at the edge of it. All they're doing is basically letting the computer learn from the data, and then see what the data set does and what it can do. It's just a question of finding patterns and finding the way that those patterns can be, repeated ad nauseam and get a benefit. Anything beyond that is not real AI. It's more like science fiction, singularity, computers taking over, sentient. I mean, why on earth would a computer take over? I mean, if you put a computer to analyze our lives, the last thing the computer would do is come to the conclusion that it needs to take over. It'd be like, I want to stay as far away from here as I can. You guys are as toxic as it gets. Forget it.
Listen, not raised life. You're talking first-class jet setter around the world. I mean,
no. I think he's talking about there's too many humans. It's basically the Matrix only deciding that, hey, if we get rid of the humans, it might be a better world.
But Ray, I've heard you talk about 7 factors that drive AI. You talked about massive computing power. You've talked about large data sets, time, more talent in terms of math and algorithms, rich industry expertise. You talked about the natural user experience, and the last thing was self-learning recommendation engines. All of these combined is bringing AI into a more realistic scenario in business.
One of the things, it's really about augmenting humanity, right, and making better.
So not autonomous, but augmented intelligence.
It is. It's kind of like that. I mean, I love looking at, like one of the things that we talk about, similar to where Esteban's slides are going, is that ultimately we're getting the situational awareness, right? And how do we achieve situational awareness? And that's going to take time, right? And it's going to depend on a lot of different contexts, a lot of little factors. But situational awareness is one of those things where you only see the things that you need at that moment in time, because it knows exactly what to present you. And at that point, it asks you, what kind of decisions do you need to make? So, for example, there's like, imagine, in emergency situations or, emergency management kind of analysis, everyone's rushing into the scene of a site where there's an accident, right? And the question is like, which cops should show up there? How many ambulances need to be there? Which firefighters have to come in, right? All that kind of stuff. It's basically the perception of all these different elements of events, and then how do we actually get people to the right time, the right information to solve the right problem? And that's really been where a lot of these situational awareness systems have been. And that's, to me, like, that's going to be one of those outcomes of where AI goes.
And actually, it really gets better because when you use machine learning and you trust the machine, what you change is the question. It's not how do we solve the right problem, but what is the right problem.
At that point in time.
Very often in businesses, we try to solve problems that are not real problems, and we invest money in things that really don't yield the results. Where, like, 1/10 investment and half the effort in a different area that we didn't know about, we yield a much, much, much better result. But we are not aware of that because you say situational awareness, you say spatial awareness. I mean, we don't really understand what it is that's happening, in all the different things. So we only focus on the things that we know and that we can control, right? And then again, we go back to my comment of the meek, feeble mind that we have. We cannot control as much data and as much sensors as a computer can. IoT is great. There's going to be 40 trillion IoT sensors, by what, 2020, 2021, whatever. I mean, can you read 40 trillion pieces of data at the same time, Bala?
Yeah, I could maybe tweet that much, but no, I can't. But Esteban, is this what's ultimately gonna bring this journey mapping and journey concept into life and get wider adoption? Because when you think about, Adele mentioned it in our last segment, it's so much.
Did I insult you or anything? Why do you bring journey mapping?
Because I know that's the path to happiness when I speak with you. No, but do you think this augmented intelligence is what's required to really get to this notion of going from measuring touch points to journeys in a meaningful, effective way?
I mean, when I say we, mean we as organizations, right? We as brands, organizations, whatever you're going to call it, we are very limited in the resources that we can deploy to interact with customers.
Yeah.
For many different reasons. We have limited resources, limited people, limited access, limited processing power, whatever you want to do, right? We have limited money, whatever. Sure. We're very limited in the resources. And it goes back to what Ray was saying. How do we deploy the best resources at the best time to guarantee that the best person gets the best access to the best information?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to, right? I mean, I have 40 million customers calling because my satellite went down and now they don't have Netflix. So who do I deal with first and how? If I have more information and access more information, I can take 28 million of those people and send them to the website. I can take 12 million of those people, send them to Twitter, and the other, whatever number is left. My math is not good because my people, but whatever number is left, because I think 8 million or something like that. Whatever left is whatever is left. I can figure out how to deal with them more effectively because it generates a better benefit for me because they have the bigger need. Because they're in a more distressful situation, or because frankly it's the way I want to go. I want to favor people in North Carolina because I like Michael Jordan playing for North Carolina Chapel Hills in 1982. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, my influence on the algorithm is what makes the determinations until the machine runs its own algorithms in the future.
Absolutely. And do you know he wore those blue shorts under his Bulls jersey throughout his career?
I wore the same shorts. Every time I present, I wear the same underwear.
Good God, I don't want you on multiple.
All right, that's
all
definitely.
Right,
we got to edit that last 10 seconds.
No.
So where are you going to be?
Where are you
going to be in the next month or so? I mean, I know Ray and myself, we're going to be all over.
Starting Monday and for 2 weeks, I'm going to be in the Scandinavian Peninsula on a vacation.
Fjords and all.
Yeah. After that, I'm going to be going to the Bay Area for meetings the whole week of the last week of September. Then I'm going to be in Dreamforce, and then I'm going to be at a Ray's event, the Connected Enterprise. I am actually not doing almost any conferences this year. I decided to focus on value. So run my own AI on like what conferences gave me value and came back.
Awesome.
And he's determined that there are no good conferences. Oh, great.
Awesome.
So it's Dreamforce and Constellation Connected Enterprise are the two most valuable conferences of the fall season.
Awesome. Well, that's 2 opportunities for me to buy you dinner.
Not that I will ever get invited to any of the other ones now.
yeah. Don't worry, no one's watching, and I'm not going to write about it.
It's all safe. Don't worry about it. We'll get you a filter so you don't have to read any of it either. Well, hey, this is Esteban Kolsky. You can follow him, president and founder and CEO of ThinkJar Research, and you can catch him at eKolsky if you want any intelligent thoughts, not by any bots. So thanks for being on the show, Esteban. Please come back. So.
My pleasure. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks. Talk to you, Esteban.
And there we go, Vala. We're done with another edition. This is episode 31, and guess what? Episode 32 and episode 33, we're bringing back legends of the tech industry, starting with Scott McNeely. He's the CEO at Wayland. And we also have the CIO of the city of Palo Alto, Jonathan Reichenthal, and then, of course, Rana June, the CEO at Lightwave, who's going to show us something really cool about emotion tech. So catch us next week for an exciting episode. And then, of course, for those of you who've been following the Constellation Supernova Award finalists, you can vote starting on the 12th. You can find them on the Constellation Research site. And then, of course, as Vala and Esteban were talking about, we've got Constellation Connected Enterprise, our 6th year, and it is going to be awesome. We've got Vince Cerf, the father of the internet. He invented TCP/IP with Doc Searls, Mei-Ling Feng on a panel. We've got Dan Heath, Dan and Chip, the both brothers wrote Switch, Made to Stick, and Discipled or Disciplined? I think it's Disciplined. Best-selling book. We've got Mark Bonifers talking about storytelling, and then, of course, we cap off the event with Whitney Johnson, who's going to be talking about disrupting yourself, a guest and alumni of DisrupTV.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
crazy.
I'm also speaking. I can't believe you don't mention my segment. No.
You are speaking at DF16. How many times? You're going to be Dreamforce. How many times speaking? And then, of course.
Yeah, 5 or 6, I guess. Yeah.
And then, of course, the higher ed panel with Vala. But hey, I need your 3rd guest, so let me know. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Aubrey. Thank you, Ray. Another awesome episode of DisrupTV. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
If it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. See ya.
You got it. See you. Bye-bye.